Well, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Living with Diabetes, broadcast this program through our partners Spectrum on Air, an international, well respected radio station that goes globally. I've got to say that because the boss of the radio station said I've got to say it, or somebody did over there. So you're with Living with Diabetes again today, and we've got some fantastic guests on this evening who is joining us hot on the heels of being based somewhere down in the Bath area, which from where I am is quite a distance. Talking about distance, we're going to be talking to Dr. Ian Lake, who is a type 1 diabetic himself, and is, as well as a lot of other things, his epic cycle ride over to Switzerland. Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Good evening. Fit as a fiddle, thank you. Yeah, all good.
So you made it okay,
I made
obviously.
I made it okay. It was a wet one this time, but it was good fun, and I made it okay.
Okay, so let's not mess around. Let's start about it because I'm intrigued. You've already done a big walk,
Yeah,
haven't you?
I
That you've done there.
yeah, we did 100 miles in 5 days, fasted, fully fasted with no food, just water only and a bit of salt.
Right.
And this came on the back of an invitation to speak about type 1 diabetes and physical activity. So I
Right.
thought I've got a little bit of time on my hands, so why not cycle to Switzerland from my hometown in Stroud?
As one does.
Do. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's position you there as well as being a GP,
Yeah.
right? I think am I correct with the NHS a couple of days a week?
Yes.
And you're spending your time with tell us a little bit about Grove.
Yeah, so Coombe Grove is a project that I'm developing to provide residential courses for people with type 1 who want to develop their way of managing insulin to make life easy for themselves. And the technique really we use is called insulin optimization. So this
Right.
will be new to some people because as type 1s, when we get diagnosed, we get taught, and I am taught as a doctor, to tell people to count their carbohydrates, the sugars that they're eating, and
Yeah.
estimate the amount of insulin they require to manage those sugars. And that's difficult to manage in practice. So over the years, over 20 years of doing that, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was heading for complications of diabetes, which of course nobody wants. So I discovered a method through reading around the subject, and there are other people around the world who are doing this, to cut down my insulin volumes, which helps me enormously to control my sugar levels.
Right.
Now I'm back into the normal range of diabetes, of sugar control for diabetes. So I feel good, and I've reduced enormously my chances of getting complications, and I've reduced my chances of day to day getting hypos and low blood sugars, etc., by a huge amount.
Okay, so let's just cover off. So I'm quite fascinated. I mean, walking 100 miles is one thing.
Yeah.
Cycling to Switzerland, as one does. No, they don't. We fly to Switzerland, where I come from anyway. Just tell me a little bit about your day-to-day routine. You left Stroud.
Yeah. So the idea was to do this as more of a scientific sort of recording of everything that I needed to record. So I recorded my diet in great detail using an app. I recorded my blood sugar every 5 minutes for the 21 days of my ride. I recorded something called ketone bodies. Now, somebody like me who's on what's called a low carbohydrate diet,
Yeah.
so you don't eat much in the way of bread,
So
pasta.
hang on a second. While we're talking about food, am I assuming that you had pre-planned the food and had it on the bike with you?
No, I did this as a solo effort, and I was intending to camp, but the weather wasn't good, and I had a lot of
Oh, right.
writing and recording to do. So I did a hotel sort of ride.
Oh, hang on a second. Hang on. This isn't a 4-hour ride in a five-star hotel overnight, is it?
Well, this is the sort of thing we're talking about now, yeah. So my meals, I bought some meals, and I had breakfast in the hotel, and then I had an evening meal wherever I was. So some of the accommodation didn't have meals, and obviously you just have to go out into the town. And I
Right.
planned to do about 60 miles a day, which is pretty average for cyclists. If you really
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
do 60 miles a day, it's 10 miles an hour for 6 hours.
Flipping egg.
So that's not bad, if you see what I mean. So you get
That's
start
not bad for me. That's impossible. 60 hours a day.
60 miles a day. So I plan to do that and record everything, record my heart rate, record the distance and the elevation, everything I possibly could, with a view to writing this up as a project to show that reducing your carbohydrates in type 1 diabetes is not a problem at all. And that proved to be the case because that's quite contentious right now in the medical world.
Yes, I've been hearing and reading about discussions about that.
Hmm.
50%, I think, is one way and 50% is another way. So sooner or later, we'll come out the other end.
Yeah,
Okay, so what do you think if you had to sum up in layman's terms? Remember, I'm not a medical guy, you are.
yeah,
And most of my listeners won't be medically
of
orientated,
course.
although they'll have knowledge. So if you could sum up the end results of the trip, what would you say? How would you position it? Have you had time to sort of formulate it all?
Yes, I have. Now, this trip was done to demonstrate the safety of what I'm doing, and I put that
Okay.
all out. One of the big aspects for people with type 1 diabetes is concern about hypos, concern about going low, especially when
Yes.
you're exercising. And
Yeah.
as a result of this concern about going low, something like 60% of people do not do much exercise with type 1 diabetes because of this. So I only had 2 episodes in 21 days of low blood sugar where I had to stop riding and correct it with glucose tablets. And
All right.
those 2 episodes only were in the first 2 days when I was adjusting my insulin to cope with the amount of exercise I was doing.
Sure.
Beyond that, everything was absolutely perfect. The interesting thing is, and this will be published, and I'll probably write a book about it in the longer term, and just to talk about it in more detail. But the funny thing about this was that on the last day, I had to climb over one of the Swiss passes to get from one valley to the other. And it's called
Yeah.
the Julia Pass. So it's not one of the worst passes by any means, but it involved climbing to 2,300 meters. So that's what, for 5,000 feet or something. And there's about 3,000 feet of climbing on a bike.
Right.
Really, really.
Would it not have been better to walk up that bit?
No, it was fine to cycle up granny gear and just keep plugging away. And it was a 4 hour ride basically from where I was stopping to where I was going to the conference in St. Moritz. And I got to the other side and I met my host and she said, "Well, how's your sugar been today?" And I said, "Do you know, I just do not know what my sugar's like." And I checked it there and then because I
Right.
had needed to check it because I knew it would be fine with the lifestyle and the diet that I was choosing to have. So that was,
Mhm.
for anybody with type 1 listening to that, they will be blown away by that because I was too. It sort of struck me. Yes, I haven't actually checked my sugar because I don't need to because I know it's going to be fine. And it was fine and it had been fine. And, and,
A
and
bit of a gamble, bit of a risk, wasn't it?
it, well, I had continuous glucose meter with alarm set on it, so if it was going
Oh,
really,
right.
really low, I'd know. But I didn't. They didn't go off at all, and I didn't have a problem. So that is the benefit of what I'm trying to say. That it's just much safer and much easier to control your blood sugar in extreme circumstances such as fairly physical exercise, but also day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that. You,
Understand it?
you you mentioned that you plan to write a book out of this with
Yeah.
your
Well,
findings.
Yeah, I'm going to publish because this is warts and all. I haven't hidden any of my 5 minute glucose traces, so some of them weren't as good as others, but I'll use those as a talking point to say why I thought that was the case, and then use that to build chapters around how the science of type 1 diabetes works and
Okay.
why you should be thinking about optimizing insulin rather than just counting carbohydrates. The problem is people are not being told not to eat what you like and inject insulin. So the general view is people with type 1 can live exactly the same lives as everybody else. You can go down the Pizza Hut and have a milkshake and chips and pizza,
Sure.
whatever. And and you can inject the right amount of insulin for it, but it's very, very difficult to get good control. And these people don't do very well in the longer term. So even though we're being told to eat what we like and shoot up insulin, it doesn't really work in the longer term. And I've been a GP now for nearly 4 decades, and I've seen every part of type 1 diabetes, from good control to bad control, to lucky people who don't seem to get complications, to unfortunate people that get complications far too early in their lives. And it's not all about their control and their food. Some of it's just the type of the condition you get. Some types of type 1 are more aggressive than others. So
Yeah.
it's not a blame game here. It's just that it's best, if we can, to try to maximize our chances, whatever severity of type 1 we have.
So let me ask you, during your 21 days, did you say
Yeah,
cycles?
yeah,
What was the, if you like, outside of the first couple of days when you had a little bit of spike in
yeah.
the readings? What was the biggest challenge? What was the scare points?
The biggest challenge really was getting the keeping the sugar in the right range, to try to balance the insulin with the level of activity I was doing. Now,
Right.
I was quite lucky in that because most of the journey was along the Rhine, the River Rhine. So
Yeah.
the rivers are fairly flat. It was gently uphill, but until I got to well into Switzerland, it was a fairly gentle route.
Yeah.
So that took away a lot of the risk. But the type of insulin I was using, which were insulin pens, so
Right.
people with type 1, they will know that you either use pens or you use a pump. But
Yeah.
I don't qualify for a pump on the National Health Service, so I was using pens. And the type of pens I was using, it was sometimes difficult to get the finesse of control that I'd have liked. So there was no danger points, though. It was fine.
Okay. So you didn't start feeling very tired all of a
No,
sudden, or
no,
having to pull over and stop.
nothing like that at all. It's surprising. I was surprised actually of how well I could just keep moving, and I was quite energized throughout the whole trip. I didn't go through the wall or the bonk or whatever you call it on
Yeah.
inside
The wall.
the wall, because the way I feel my body does not lead to me hitting the wall, because I fuel my body with mainly fat and protein, and because I don't take carbohydrates or sugars, and that prevents me hitting the wall basically. So I could power on as well as I could. Now, let's just say I'm 65 years old. I'm an average bog standard cyclist. I'm not a competitive cyclist by any means.
Mhm.
I do cycle around locally. I do a bit of mountain biking, but I don't go out dressed in lycra on a Sunday morning, annoying motorists and doing doing 50 miles before breakfast or things like that. So
Yes.
I would try to pitch this as an average person just doing a long distance, but doing a reasonable amount of miles a day, which most people could do when they get to a reasonable level of fitness.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'll tell you what we'll do. As we've been going for nearly 20 minutes, let you have a bit of a pause, and we've selected the first track for you. I think I'm not accepting responsibility for this, but in memory of your journey, I thought it would be quite apt to play Bicycle Race by the Queen.
Excellent.
But you get the opportunity to dedicate this to someone. Who do you want to dedicate it to?
Well, I want to dedicate this to my friend Josephine Barberino, who is the person who's organised the conference in Switzerland and gave me the opportunity to talk about it. So
Oh,
this is
great. How long were you speaking for?
two talks of 45 minutes each.
Oh, not too bad, not too bad.
Yeah,
Okay, well, this is well dedicated then, and we'll give it in memory of that, and we'll have a quick listen, and we'll be back with you with Dr. Ian Lake and his epic cycle ride to Switzerland, in a few minutes after the Queen number. Here we go. That always strikes me as ending very quickly, and I don't know why, but it does. Hang on, we're just getting a blurred on there. So I thought that was quite apt. You're back now with Stuart Moore at Living with Diabetes, and Dr. Ian Lake from Coombe Grove, who did an epic bike ride right over to Switzerland
yeah.
in the recent weeks. And we're just chatting about what's going on, how's he doing it, and all the rest of it. The Queen number was quite good and quite apt, I would have thought. Right, what did you occupy yourself while you were cycling 6 hours or 60 miles a day, 10 hours a day on the
Yeah,
way over? I mean, it must be pretty boring.
there's a lot of map reading to do. The funny thing about maps is that they never actually are easy. I use three different mapping systems online because when you're actually cycling, sometimes the route doesn't become apparent until very, very late. So
Right.
and some of the routes sort of disappeared. Google Maps was probably the most reliable that I used, but sometimes it used to just disappear over railway lines and into what you'd think is a walking track, and that was quite hard work over gravel and ruts. But yeah, I had my own thoughts, which was a terrible thing to have to do. Thinking about the route, looking around, taking photographs. It was good fun actually. Once you got into the rhythm after about a week, it was just moving from one town to the next and just observing the countryside as it changed, observing the river.
Trouble is, though, if you do something like that and you do too much thinking, you get to know yourself too well, and you think, "Oh my God, what am I doing?"
100%. Yeah, it can get boring. Yeah, it can very much so. And of course, you always get the same answers if you ask yourself the same question. But that
Mhm.
was what I chose to do. I chose it to do it solo and unsupported because I thought that was the most dramatic way to do it. To do it with friends would have been more fun, but it wouldn't have
Sure.
had the same impact for me as a sort of a vague science experiment, really, to do this.
Okay, so what made you first and originally decide I'm going to Switzerland to speak at a conference? What was the conference about, incidentally?
The conference was called Keto Live. It was all about the sort of diet that I'm involved in, the ketogenic diet, which is
Yeah,
becoming quite popular in other things now. There are topics on things like mental health,
yeah.
which were, things like migraines and things like bipolar disease respond very, very well to a ketogenic diet. And anybody who has severe migraines or who has bipolar disease should be looking that up, really.
Okay.
There are articles on how to support cancer treatment with a keto diet, which seems to be gaining traction at the moment. Articles on talks on diabetes and heart disease and sports performance. So it was a comprehensive look at the potential of nutrition as therapy as opposed to tablets for therapy. So nutrition first, lifestyle first, tablets second. And we seem to be getting that the wrong way round at the moment. We seem to be tablets first and lifestyle bolted on. But I think we should be thinking about taking nutrition more seriously than we do. We're not all designed in the same way to just gobble down any old food that comes into our mouths and hope it does the job for us. Our bodies need nurturing and feeding the right foods.
So, in your medical opinion, are we getting a little bit too reliant on things like the Chinese takeaway, the Indian takeaway, the kebabs, the burgers, all the fast food stuff, more so than the fresh vegetables and fruits and things?
Yeah, there's something now, and everyone reads about it, called ultra processed food, which basically means
Yeah.
food has undergone several processes before it reaches the packet or before it reaches your table. Now, food has always been processed ever since. So, years ago, if you took down an antelope or a buffalo or something, that was a huge amount of meat. And if it was summertime, you had no way of, you didn't have a fridge to put it in or a freezer. So, people smoked and salted meat to preserve it, to keep it going. So that was preserving. But now we have additives in food to enhance the color, enhance the flavor, enhance the shelf life and the texture, which have nothing to do with nutrition. They're not nutrients at all. They're added to make the product more appealing. And we know that refined sugars tend to have an addictive property or certainly affect us emotionally, which is why we like, your first birthday cake age 3 when you blow out the candles, that reinforces the fact that sweet
Yeah.
foods are associated with happy times.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Well,
you play a lot of songs and the word sugar and honey and sweet comes up in a lot of love songs. It's an emotional response to food. And at the moment, the ultra processed foods are the predominant food that we consume, and some people are consuming up to 60% of their diet with ultra processed food.
but
And
isn't all trust food? I mean, isn't it a case that the wallet comes into play there? Because processed foods tend to be a lot cheaper in the supermarkets than a lot of the fresh stuff.
Yes, they can be, but it's understanding that I mean that's a government job to guide the nation without being a nanny state. You can guide food choices through various taxes on certain products, like we did for cigarettes, like we do for petrol, etc. It's that's a political and a government decision. But yes, these foods can be cheaper, but they're not exclusively cheaper. And I did an experiment where I did a ketogenic diet, buying quality food, but from supermarkets and as cheap as I could, and got it down to £10 less than the national average spend based on government numbers. So the government numbers say that everyone spends about £35 a week on food, which I think is quite a lot, and this was coming down to £28 a week for a nutritive diet of healthy foods.
Oh,
So
so my half a dozen tins of beans and a loaf of bread then is
well,
quite
they're cheap.
rich.
They're cheap, yeah, very cheap. But so the idea is to improve our diet by using foods that are nutritious. Nutrient density is the buzzword right now. So that can only come from real foods, whether you're vegetarian or whether you eat meat or whether you eat fish or whatever. You need fresh foods as much as you possibly can. Yes, they may be expensive compared to what I would call junk foods,
Yeah.
but when you look at these TV programs, some people, when they look at people's kitchens, don't they, and say how much you're spending, and people are spending thousands on takeaways without really knowing it. A cup of coffee at a lot of outlets now is £3.50.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, isn't it? If you see what I mean. People don't see that as a food purchase, if you see
Yeah.
what I mean. So, so I think it's how much you want to invest in your health. Yes, it can be expensive, and certainly people who are on very very low incomes, it is a struggle in all aspects of life for those people. And that's another political thing. How can we help those people without forcing them into making choices of cheap, nasty food? These people deserve access to healthy food the same as everybody else. But for a lot of people, it's a matter of what emphasis you put on choosing food for your health. We tend to spend very little on our health with food compared with years ago.
Yeah, but I think in this day and age, we tend to spend an awful lot of money on destroying our health, smoking, drinking,
Yeah.
all the takeaways, as you rightly said. But let me ask you this, and this is so I don't have to wait 18 weeks to get an appointment to see a GP. You're on the line, so I will take advantage. Is one thing that I would like is that I've, in trying to look after my ungainly size and everything,
Yes.
I've given up. I mean, I don't drink alcohol at all, but I've given up fizzy drinks completely.
Yes.
I might have a diet coke
Yeah.
once a week if I'm lucky, but I've gone on to water, and I also find water kills my appetite sometimes.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd sometimes in the morning, particularly, um, with me, it's either a full English breakfast, less the black pudding because I can't stand it, or a slice of toast.
Yeah.
So 99.9% of the time, it's going to be a slice of toast. I've stopped doing that now and started drinking water.
Yes.
And I find that fills me up. Does water make a big difference to the diabetic sort of trait?
Well, it's, water's preferable to any other form of drink, certainly. But all drinks contain water. But apart from, well, milk does as well. But
Sure.
but yes, water fills your stomach up and expands the stomach and tells your body that it's full. And certainly, the general view is that reducing our calorie intake is desirable, whether we're overweight or not, because
Yeah.
we tend to we tend to eat more than is good for us. Overall, 60% of our population are overweight now, and
How many? Sorry, how much?
60%, but only 30% are obese. The overweight category, there are categories of weight.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And they become so. Water is, yes, it's an excellent product, and drink your water. Don't overdrink it. Drink when you're thirsty. But if you have a
Yeah.
glass of water first thing in the morning, it does help. It helps with habit forming as well, because I like a cup of coffee in the morning, and that's purely habit, nothing more than habit. So drinking water and then having the coffee later, you can make a good case for that. So yeah, I'd encourage drinking of water. I'd certainly discourage soda drinks that contain artificial sweeteners, and certainly
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
soda drinks that contain sugar. Monster,
Yeah.
Monster.
I mean, I usually have my water in the morning, and then I've got into this habit. It is a habit of pulling off the road on the way to work and having a large latte at Starbucks
Yeah,
with
yeah,
with caramel in it, and
yeah,
I'm trying to cut down on those as well because that can't be good to me. I mean, it does last me the whole morning up to lunchtime, and I
yeah,
only had a sandwich at lunchtime.
yeah. I mean,
Uh, so,
sounds like your diet's not too bad overall, does it? I mean, cutting down the caramel from the latte could help, couldn't it? But
yeah, Ian, that's too kind of you, but you can see me on this screen, and I know what I'm like. But
well,
I'll take any bit of flattery and compliments.
it sounds like you're changing your lifestyle to some degree, and
Well, I'm getting older, as we all are, so I'm trying to do my best.
excellent.
But sometimes I admit I do fall foul of it. I mean, I'm going to struggle. I live in a village, very
Mm,
small village, and every Friday evening we get the mobile fish and chip man in.
yeah, yeah.
So I've cut out large chips and I've gone to small chips with the sausage or a pie.
More of them.
But that's only once a week, and I call that my special treat.
Yeah, some people
Yeah,
do have that as part of their
yeah.
strategy, don't
Just,
they?
just for making it through the week without being killed or somebody having a go at me. So I've been doing that. Let's get back to, if I may, let's get back to the outcome of your book. When are you planning your book?
I'm writing it right now. I'm taking a bit of a break from general practice to get this out because it's quite a lot of writing and quite a lot of research to do, and it will be in chapters for each day, and each chapter will describe things like you're talking about, like water, what is hydration, energy in the body, how do you get your energy in the body, what is your energy supply. Certainly, people with type 1 diabetes are told that you need sugar for energy, and a lot of people believe that you need sugar for energy. Well, you can use sugar for energy, but you don't have to use sugar for energy. And
Right.
I was using, when I was doing my cycle rides, I was using fat for my energy. I was burning my internal fat stores. Now, I'm quite a slim chap, but I've still got 85,000 calories of fat in my body. So this fat will last me for weeks if I don't eat anything at all. But I've only got 2,000 calories of sugar stored in my body of something called glycogen, which is a sugar store which is for immediate release. In
Right.
those situations where you get scared and need to run away from something quite quickly, or get in a fight or something, when your adrenaline makes you run really quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm a fat burner. I burn fat and not sugar. I don't eat sugar because I have type 1 diabetes. And it makes more sense when you look at the science of type 1 diabetes and nutrition and metabolism, which is, the burning fuel. It makes more sense to burn fat as someone with type 1 diabetes than it does
Sure.
to burn sugar. And you've heard of the thing called the keto diet. A lot of people have heard of the keto diet.
Yeah.
Well, the keto diet is nothing more than than allowing your body to burn fat, and that's it. So in type 1 diabetes, we are encouraged to eat a lot of sugar, and take a lot of insulin. And I don't think that's a healthy state. You see, our bodies, we call our bodies, do our bodies need sugar? Well, some parts of the body do need sugar, but but I can make my own sugar if I don't eat it. My tissues will make sugar in the amount that I need. So they're very clever like that. So, for example, if the poor people that end up under earthquake zones and spend 8 days before they're rescued alive, well, they haven't eaten any sugar, but their bodies have made it for them. So I don't need to eat sugar to provide myself with energy, but the vast, vast majority of my energy comes from fat. And I've got so much fat on my body, even though I'm slim, it's there for fuel and it's stored for fuel. So I'm a multi-fuel person. My body can choose the fuel it wants, and
So
that's
looking at the size of me, my fat could last me for months.
keep it going for a long, long time. So come the famine, you'll be one of the last people standing. You don't want to be rude by that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but let's
So
take the point.
the thing I'm saying is that if you're fat burning, you produce these things called ketones. Okay,
Yeah,
ketone. That's just end result of fat burning. So keto burning is fat burning, and
yeah,
Ketones are liked by the brain, and as I said earlier, migraine and bipolar disease, and there's a study coming out quite soon that's showing that general depression is going to be helped by fat-burning keto diets. So that's what I choose to do. I choose to multi-fuel my body. Whereas before I went keto 10 years ago, I was forcing my body to only produce sugar for energy. And now I feel I'm much fitter than I was 10 years ago. And the bike I went on, 17 years old, but I don't think my body's aged 17 years because I feel just so much more able to do. I wouldn't have even dreamt of doing this after 20 years of type 1 diabetes until I discovered insulin optimization, where you manage your insulin well rather than just manage your diet.
And I assume by managing this and managing your insulin properly and the keto side, it would be very good if people were involved in sports. Because you said earlier
Yeah.
about the sports side, you mentioned the sports side. Is that the kind of thing a good sportsman would watch or an athlete?
They're starting to. There are professional sports people now that are using keto diets with type 1 diabetes. There's certainly rugby players that do that, and some runners do that too. It seems to be quite good for long distance running. So people are now fueling their sport with fat, and there's some good evidence now to show that fat burning is equal to sugar if you're adapted to fat burning, if you're what's called keto adapted, and I'm what's called keto adapted. So I've been cutting down my carbs for so long, my body's fully adapted to sugar, really.
Okay, and does this also apply the same sort of general rules as say I'm not a medical person about keto and what you do and how you burn thing apply to the young generation? And I'm
Applies,
talking about children,
yeah,
say
yeah, it applies to
I've
everybody.
met a very lively young lady, 8 years old. She's had type 1 since she was six.
Oh dear, yeah,
And the major benefit of having type 1 as she's six, I said to her, what are the disadvantages? I was talking to her mum about how she had to cook for her and give her meals. And this little girl piped up with the fact that she quite enjoyed being told at six because she managed then to persuade her father and her mother to give her a mobile phone.
yeah, of course, to monitor
So,
the
yeah, so that was the height for her. So she was the only person of her age group actually in her school at the time.
yeah.
She was the first with a mobile phone. So that was a badge. So does this all apply to young children and old folk as well, or is it got to
Yeah,
be all different?
no, the principle applies to everybody. The fat burning keto diet frees up the body to choose the organs and the tissues of the body to choose the fuel they want, because some tissues prefer fat, some tissues prefer sugar. And by going on a low insulin diet, which basically frees up fat burning, you,
Yeah.
you you provide your body with everything, and it applies to children. It applies to the elderly as well. So it's providing your body with the right fuel. And at Coombe Grove, where we do the 6 day residential course, we spend a day on diet only, and then we spend a day on physical activity, which is very important for type 1. It improves type 1 enormously. And we spend a day on mental health, and we spend a day on the environment we live in, and then we spend a day on sleep and our body rhythms to give the whole picture, because every single one of those will affect how insulin works in our bodies, whether we have type 1 diabetes or not. But in type
Okay.
1, it
o-
is.
Okay. Well, let's expand a little bit about that and what you do at Combe. Um, how often do you run these courses? You're saying they're a 6 day course, residential course?
A 6 day residential course, and it's for people with type 1 diabetes. We don't take children at the moment. We've only just started doing. We've run two. We've got another one coming up in September and another one coming up next February. So we do three a year.
Right.
Trying to do four a year, and we take people with type 1 and give them the information and the education they need really to become experts on metabolism and experts on their how to manage their diabetes.
Okay, and when you say they're not, I need to interrupt you because I've got to think of these questions I've got to ask, otherwise I'll forget them. When you're saying we don't take children, what is the age group you take from?
18 and above at the moment,
Oh,
because
right.
we're putting our way with it. We intend to be taking families at some point, but Coombe Grove won't be the environment for families. Coombe Grove isn't a family environment in that sense.
Oh,
So we'll be looking elsewhere.
oh, that sounds ominous. I looked, I looked at a picture of it, and it looked like a brilliant little. Well,
it's a lovely place, but it's more of an for adults, really, adult retreats type of things, really, for yoga and relaxation.
yeah, I've heard stories about these sort of things going on down
Retreats,
the
yeah.
Bath area. So we won't pursue that just in case we've got
Oh,
some people under 18 or 16 listening. I'll leave that to you. We'll discuss that afterwards when we finish the
thank
program.
you.
I might be, because if they're that good, I might be coming down for 6 days. You never know if I can afford it. And you're saying you're running 3 of these a year, and now you're moving up to 4.
Yeah, trying to. It's just getting the numbers right at the moment and getting the advertising out. It is a fairly radical concept, and it's not something that the NHS is comfortable with in the main. About half of doctors don't like keto diets at all in type 1 diabetes. The other half don't mind too much. But very few people actively teach it as a way of managing type 1 because the
Okay, so you've got to get an educational program out there first for people.
ideally, well, we think it's the grassroots are the way to go. So we're trying to get, when people turn up, we do about 10 people. We have about 10 people running through at a time. That gives us time to spend with everyone and give them quality time rather than just rush through whole
Yeah.
numbers. Gives them time to relax and get it right perfectly for them. And then in return for that, we get a lot of data, and then we'll be producing evidence of our experience and how it works. And then from that evidence, we'll hopefully be able to convince our medical colleagues that it's a safe and favourable practice for a lot of people who can finally get control of their diabetes. We have some wonderful testimonials which are on my website, and people get really grateful that they finally get control of their diabetes, often for the first time in their lives after 20 or 30 years of having diabetes. And that certainly applied to me after 20 years of, oh, you're a doctor, you know how to manage type 1. I know the principle, but I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. And now I know that the reason I couldn't do it was because what I was being asked to do was unrealistic. And obviously, when you get the condition, it's more difficult than telling people when you haven't got a condition. So
Let me go back a few decades and ask you this. This is more of interest to me, really.
yeah,
Here you are, you've gone through all the training,
yeah,
become a GP,
yeah.
which, let's face it, it's not an overnight vocation, is it?
No,
You've got university, then you've got medical school,
yeah.
then you spend time in hospital.
3 years extra in hospital after
Okay,
qualification, and
all
then
right. So from the time you started to the time you become a qualified GP, how many years was that roughly?
9.
9. So you spend 9 years you learning all about the medical business.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you find out you were type 1?
When I was 35, so I've been qualified about 10 years at that stage.
Did you not see it coming?
Not at all. No,
Really?
not at all. It was type 1 often appears overnight in people, or very. I diagnosed it accurately myself, which I was quite pleased about.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it happened in a day for me. There were possible clues earlier, for example, but I was working really hard doing day and night work, so I was always tired.
With the NHS, yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
So you made an appointment with yourself and didn't have to wait 6 months.
No, I had all the equipment on me. Yeah, I didn't have to wait.
Sorry, that was a bit.
I think
I can't resist having a go because you
I
have to wait for so long now.
think if that happened to you, getting the same day with type 1 diabetes. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Recommend type 1 diabetes, but you would get an appointment the same day.
Okay. And how did you react?
I when
Stunned or?
I was stunned and resigned to it. You get the diagnosis, you say, "Oh my goodness, I'm diabetic now," and of course, I've had quite a lot of experience of managing diabetes, and I know how difficult it is, and the long-term outcomes aren't brilliant, and
No.
people don't do well. We often don't live as long as people who don't have diabetes. So, I was looking at a life full of just decline really over time, and it's quite shocking. It's quite a bit of grieving for your lost life, and you have to change your life, and it's a 24-hour a day condition. You can't just take a break from it because
Yeah.
it
But
doesn't take.
if you do the right things, I mean, you can live a long life, can't you?
Yeah, if you do the right things, you can live a long life, and we try to encourage people to get good regular sugar levels, and
Yeah.
and that's the idea. And the better your sugar levels, the less likely you are to get complications. But for those people listening who have got complications, have tried really, really hard, as I said right at the start, there are more aggressive forms of type 1 in some people than others.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's not a blame game here. It's just luck of the draw. But if you can control your sugar levels well, but crucially now, I think if you control your insulin levels well too, and reduce your insulin as well as get good sugar levels, I think that is the key to success. And that's why I'm keen to do this cycle trip and write a book about it, and why I'm keen to run these courses to help people get better control.
And I
And
assume your book's going to include a lot of pointers.
absolutely. It'd be
Yeah.
a manual basically, but it won't be a dry textbook. Hopefully, it'll have a little bit of amusing anecdotes in there as well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Saves the boredom of learning about, this is these
yeah.
are
That'll
hydrate.
push up. That'll also push up the sales as well.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. Now listen, it's what is it now? We're almost coming up to the end of the program. Time's gone so quickly. The second track we're going to play for you is the "This Girl" by Kungs versus "Cooking on Three Burners."
Yeah. First of
How
all,
on earth did you come up with that?
I like the song. It's a great summer song, and it's summer right now. But the reason I'm
It
choosing
is.
this time,
I
the
mean, I've
reason,
been in the music. I've been on radio and music for ages, more years than I care, nearly as long as you've been a doctor. And I've never come across it.
well, there you go. It's a lovely song in itself. But the reason I'm using "Cooking on Three Burners" is that I've been talking in this show about how I'm allowing my body to multi-fuel. So
Yeah,
my body
yeah.
can choose whether it uses sugar, fat, or ketones. Okay, so
Okay,
multi-fuels.
okay.
Cooking on three burners is a
Oh, all
reference.
right. Listen, I'm prepared because if it is good, I'll put it on the library and I'll make sure I play on a regular basis. So, have you got anyone to dedicate this to?
Yes, I want to dedicate to all the people at Coombe Grove who had faith in me and my project, because this was a highly controversial project. It's the first in the world. It's done really, really well, and we're looking forward to presenting the data. And also, this is what we teach at Coombe Grove. We teach that you need to make your body multi-fuel. It's a much more healthy way of living. So
Okay, for all you guys and gals down at Tomb Grove, here we go.
that's for you.
And I'll just have a listen and think. Well, I think I'll give you my opinion on it afterwards. This girl comes and cooking on. See, I'll tell you what. I'd like to meet the person who thought of that name for the group.
It's a great name, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, here we go for the people at Tomb Grove.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing that I've got a countdown on a track is being played on here. And what is very good for me is it came down to one very quickly. So I think that is an average pace. Someone appeared at my door and I said, "Do you like that?" And they turned around and walked away because they could see I was broadcasting. Anyway, that was for the
That was the
Grove,
Coombe Grove.
the
That was
Grove group.
absolutely.
So that is very, very good. Right now, then, obviously, you've told us an awful lot about what's going on, what you have been doing. First of all, another question. Before you write your book and to help you with your research, do you plan any other expedition like, I don't know, canoeing up the Amazon or something crazy? Or
Right now, nothing's coming to mind, Stuart, but this never came to mind until 3 weeks before I did it. So
wow,
we'll wait and see. But
okay. So you're open to ideas,
yeah, I'm open to ideas, any suggestions. I like the canoeing side of it. That sounds quite fun to me.
really? Well, down where you are, why don't you? I don't know. Why don't you ride the what do they call it? The whore up the River
Oh,
Severn.
the River Severn Bore. Yeah,
Yeah, ball. That's it, or whatever it is.
we do.
Yeah, sorry, slip of the tongue there. Apologies to anybody that heard different. Okay, got to be careful there, haven't I? Really, you ride the bore up the River Severn. I mean, that goes for ages, doesn't it?
It's 5 minutes or so, isn't it? 5 to 10 minutes, I think. Yeah. If
Oh,
you
is it?
Yeah, it's just the tide coming in, and every so often you get a really high tide, and everybody surfs it or tries to surf.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll keep an eye on that for the future, and we'll have you back on and talking about that. That's important. Right, we spoke an awful lot about what was going on and everything. If for all our listener out there, if I wanted to take three main things, let's say, or four main things out of this in the time we've got left, what would they be? Summarize it for us.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the key thing with type 1 diabetes and is to try your best to get as good a blood glucose level as you can. And the best way you can do that is to reduce the amount of carbohydrates you're taking in your diet. And we were all trained in type 1 to manage our carbs and our insulin, so it's not that big an ask. And I would definitely start reducing my refined sugars. I would stop thinking that you can eat what you like and inject insulin. I would start to think I can eat healthily, I can eat well, and I can eat good food, but I should not be thinking about eating what I like. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is we should get over this idea that we need sugar for energy. You can use sugar for energy, but you don't have to take sugar for energy. So, for example, I'll be doing the Stroud Half, I should think, this October, and I'll be doing it fully fasted because I won't, and a lot of the people who are running, they'll be full of sugar and there'll be sugar stations all the way along.
Yeah.
But you don't need sugar for energy, whether you're doing physical activity or not. You can use sugar, and it's very, very useful for some people, certainly if you're hypo, but it's not necessary to eat sugar for energy. So if you're cutting your carbohydrates down, you're basically cutting your sugars down. Don't worry about it. And then you'll find you'll get lower insulin levels. And the good thing about lower insulin levels is that then you get less severe hypos and you get fewer hypos. So there's evidence you get 5 to 6 times fewer hypos. And if you're type 1 and have hypos, you'll know how important that is. So they're the main points I would talk about. So when you get down to lower insulin levels and fewer hypos, you'll get more confident that you'll be able to do physical activity. And if you can build a bit of physical activity into your everyday, whether that be walking, pottering, gardening's very good too. Not just sitting in the garden listening to cooking on 3 burners, having a G&T, but actually doing it in the garden. And then I think you'll find that that will stand you in good stead and help you to manage your diabetes much more easily. If you get your insulin levels down, your glucose levels will follow. And once your glucose comes down, you'll feel a lot better and start to get those good results that you've been craving for and desperate to get and never quite achieve. We've been there, I've been there with you for 20 years of my diabetes life, but now I'm used to getting normal numbers and I don't want to go back anytime soon.
Yeah, and of course, at all stages going through this, don't hang around and worry. Go and see a doctor.
Yeah, tell the doctor or nurse what you want to do, and they will support you in that. That's important to get your diabetes right. But
Yeah.
we do it 24/7, 365, 366. So we know what we're doing. It's just getting back to carb counting and getting back to insulin estimation, getting that accurate. With pumps, it's becoming easy to do that. So if you have a pump, that's easier to do.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Dr. Lake, what can I say? Fascinating subject. We could go on about it all day. Congratulations on your trip to Switzerland. I
Thank you.
assume your speaking at the conference was well received after all that effort.
Yeah, it was fun because I managed to get some good points across, which weren't obvious to the audience about insulin and things like that. So, and there was a fairly medical audience, so I was quite privileged to be able to do that.
Okay, and a quick call out for Coombe Grove, the website www.coombegrove.com.
Yeah.
If my information is there an email to send down there, or is it info at? Or
Uh,
just go on the website and contact us, I suppose.
Go on the website. There's an information point on their website. Yes.
Okay, that's cool. We can do that. All right. Well, what can I say? Thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate it. But if you hold down, I'll wrap it up, and I'd like to have a quick chat with you offline if you like. Got a doctor on the line. You don't let him go. I've got to tell you.
That's been great
That's
fun.
easy.
I hope
Free
to see
free
you.
advice. Yeah.
Take
Okay. Well, that's it for Living with Diabetes for this program. We'll be back again fairly soon, and I think I'm going to have a rerun because very important to me is about nutrition and that kind of stuff, and talk to the expert in that. And she's a lovely lady. If she can make it, I'll get that lined up, and we'll be back on air and in a program in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, Living with Diabetes, we launched a petition just over 4 weeks ago about having free glucose patches from the NHS. We worked out the rough figures, and I've often stated to people it would save the government or the NHS about 14 billion, not million, billion pounds a year. if they looked at something like that. Now, we launched this petition only 4.5 weeks ago, and so far we've got just over 42,000 signatures. So we're going to carry on pushing that and one thing and another. And if you go onto our website, which is www.livingwithdiabetes.co.uk, you can stay up to date with not only going on and signing the petition, and incidentally, while you're on there, if you sign up for our newsletter, you get a free glucose patch from Abbott Care worth £50. So that's always worth going on to trying that, bearing in mind what my guest has been saying this evening, of course. But that's something that we've tied up, which we're doing. But over 42,000 signatures, still a way to go, but we're going to be getting there, and they're coming in live and fast.
You are listening to Spectrum on Air, the colourful voice of radio.